Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Joy-Filled Universe podcast. I am your host, Lisa Ryan, and today I had one idea in mind, and then true to form, at the very last minute, a new idea popped up, and I just changed the whole plan, and so it's very last minute, but here we are. And so today, I really want to talk about something that has very quietly transformed my life, and I definitely think that it's like a compounding effect over the past several years. And I say this because we don't have to work on self-development for years and years before we start seeing results. Rather, the more we practice, the more the impact compounds for us. And the best way I can think to describe this transformation is kind of in a metaphorical way. And I believe that personally, I have made myself become bulletproof, or should I say I'm becoming bulletproof. And it's bulletproof from that low vibe energy bullets that can come at us, whether they're meant for us or that we're caught in the crossfire. I believe that we can make ourselves bulletproof so that regardless of how these bullets come at us, we stay protected. And so today I am going to walk all of us through some of my routine habits that I have put into practice over the past handful of years. And I can honestly say I have really noticed a big difference in my life. So first, I want to offer a smidge of clarity here too. And I want to impress upon you that when I say bulletproof, I don't mean that I have become cold or emotionally unavailable and pretend that nothing ever hurts me. No, I don't suppress my feelings or act like difficult people or situations don't exist at all. So what I mean when I say that I'm becoming more and more bulletproof is that I'm becoming so grounded in who I am, so connected to my own inner peace that other people's emotional responses or emotional agendas, they rarely, if ever, dictate my own. So I have been learning to protect my energy, and I have become hyper aware of the fact that not every opinion deserves my attention, and not every criticism deserves my belief, and not every emotional invitation deserves my RSVP as a yes. Because what I have noticed is that lots of people, whether they are our friends or our family or strangers or whoever, they aren't really always looking for a conversation as much as they're looking for a reaction. And what I mean by this is our brains are wired with what's called a negativity bias, which was really handy thousands of years ago because paying attention and scanning for danger is what kept us alive. And today, that same kind of wiring, although we're not being hunted by saber-toothed tigers, but that same type of wiring can cause us to become drawn to drama and conflict, outrage, and gossip. So every time those types of interactions give us attention or validation or a feeling of being right, our brain reinforces the pattern. And then before long, we can find ourselves unconsciously seeing reactions from others versus true conversations. And I'll elaborate more on that in just a little bit, but I want to stay on track here. So I'm going to go through some practices today, and they aren't in any type of priority order, but these are definitely my go-tos and the things that I do intentionally every single day. So the first practice I want to share is to protect our energy by RSVPing to low vibe, emotionally charged energy with a hard no. And you might be thinking to yourself, well, okay, Lisa, yeah, but I do that anyway because you know what? I want to be happy. So I got that. I'm already doing it. And I understand that. But I think if we aren't aware, we can unintentionally subscribe to these types of situations when they do come up for us. And so, for example, if you think about anger for a moment, anger is one of the fastest ways to get another human to engage. When someone is frustrated or hurt or overwhelmed or insecure, they often unconsciously project that energy outward, as if they want someone else to feel what they're feeling, hence the old saying, misery loves company. So when people are feeling some super low vibe, they can act out. And when they do, it's as if they're saying, hey, you know what? Come on over here and join me in this emotional state because it's pretty crappy over here. And I actually don't want to be here by myself. And then you know what happens? Many of us RSVP to this invitation usually with a yes. And that yes oftentimes looks like we're defending ourselves by explaining or arguing or even just emotionally agreeing and getting on board with whatever the main complaint is. And then from there, we can end up replaying whatever that conversation was over and over in our heads for hours or even days. And before we know it, we've picked up the other person's emotional energy backpack and we start carrying it on our own backs as well. And I did this. I actually did this. I know I did for many years. But what I have finally been starting to understand is that just because someone hands us their emotional baggage doesn't mean that we have to carry it. And so something that we can put into practice here, which helps us to become bulletproof to these types of situations, is recognizing when these types of invitations show up. And when they do, because they absolutely will, we can politely RSVP with a big old no. And by practicing this, I have to say, I have become really difficult to offend. So much so that I even tell people that I don't really know or even that I've just met, I actually tell them, if they want to offend me or they want me to take something personally, they're going to have to tell me that that is their intention. Otherwise, it's just not going to penetrate me. And that is totally true. I tell people this all the time. And I will also say too, that people do occasionally say offensive things to me. However, my bulletproof shield shows up because I do not automatically allow those things to mean something to me or about me. In fact, I kid you not, there have been times like after meetings or something like that, that someone would come up to me and they'd be like, hey, Lise, that person in there, they were actually insulting you. You know that, right? And what I love most is the times when I never even entertained interpreting it that way. And I typically would then reply with, hey, you know what? I didn't take it that way. And that's the truth, because I intentionally did not assign my identity to someone else's words. Kind of like the Stoic philosopher Epictetus. He said, people are disturbed not by things, but by the views they take of them. Or in other words, say like an event happens, right? And someone says something or someone rolls their eyes, they ignore our idea or they criticize us. And the event itself, right? So the event here itself is completely neutral. However, what creates our emotional experience is the meaning that we assign to it. So in this example, we might assign something like, they don't respect me, or they think that I'm not good enough, or they think I'm stupid, or they're attacking me. And who really knows, right? Who really knows? However, what we do know is that we get to choose our story. And just that thought, oh my God, I say that to myself, like I will say that to myself almost every day. I get to choose my own story, because that thought alone, in my humble opinion, is really comforting. And it's also really freeing and empowering, because it reminds us that we are in charge and we are in control of our lives. And we are also always the best-selling author of our own story. No one can write our story as good as we can. And if you think about that from like a law of attraction or a law of vibration perspective too, if we see our experiences as glass half full, or that optimistic view that everything's happening for us, and we stay curious, we won't then buy into the negativity or even like the stoking that people might do to us, or should I say the invitation of inviting us in to participate. And we won't pay attention to that, or actually it won't penetrate us the way that they're intending it to. And we then will find ourselves focused on what's working for us. We're finding ourselves in a state where we're saying, this is working for me. It's in our favor, which means our emotions are aligned with good and confidence and successful thoughts. And so then as a result, we then radiate that frequency, which means what we are putting out there, we will receive, because like energy attracts like energy. So if you think about that, then it is a win-win. We cannot lose because we are making ourselves bulletproof. Okay, so this first technique is RSVPing with a no when we're invited in to an emotional state that is not serving our highest good. Let's just politely decline and then reposition ourselves to a place that just feels more emotionally aligned with our high vibe. Okay, the next technique is becoming a conscious observer. And what I mean by consciously observing is noticing what is happening without immediately becoming what is happening. A lot of people don't really observe life, they actually tend to absorb it. They absorb other people's moods, opinions, fears, anger, and expectations until they can no longer tell the difference between what belongs to them and what belongs to someone else. However, a conscious observer creates a small space between the event and their response, as opposed to just immediately reacting to something that feels like emotionally charged. And oh, by the way, when we are the conscious observer, right, it doesn't mean that we don't care or that we're emotionally unavailable. It means that we are present enough to notice what's happening before we allow it to shape our thoughts, emotions, or our actions. So the practice here that I like to use most frequently is when there is a trigger or an emotionally charged event, right, I become extra curious while noticing what just happened. I then take notice of the story that I might be creating based on what I'm feeling inside, along with what the other person or the people are displaying. And then I think through, how am I going to respond to this? And the response can just calmly be saying to someone, you know what? It feels like you're really frustrated, or I get the sense that you're upset with me and I'd really love to know what's going on. And when we respond with a higher vibrational energy and a level of curiosity, the energy then in the other person, many times it shifts. And it's almost just like turning a light on in a dark room. When someone realizes that they've been seen and not judged, just seen, they often soften up. And even if they don't, by the way, that's okay too, because our responsibility isn't managing their emotions. Our responsibility is managing our own. In fact, many years ago, when someone would send me an emotionally charged email, I would oftentimes print it out and I'd take it to their office and I'd ask them to read it back to me. And I did this because in my mind, I believed that I had to have been reading tone into the message. And even if I wasn't, when the person messaged that back their email to me, they would read it to me 10 out of 10 times. The way it came back to me was always in a positive way and had a very positive spin to it. And you know what else? There have also been times where people have been upset with me for whatever reason. And I certainly did not pretend that challenge didn't exist. However, refer back to the first practice where we discussed that RSVPing with a hard no to their emotional state, which is what I would do. Yet I would still use that experience. I would as a growth opportunity. And I would think things like, what can I learn from this? Or how is this happening for me? And what exists under the emotions that I'm feeling? And is what I'm feeling coming from a place of truth? Or perhaps it's coming from fear or insecurity or even an old story that I've been telling myself. And I then just kind of observe the event as it is, a neutral event. It only becomes charged when we place our emotions onto it. And I just want to say too that if you feel super fired up in a situation, then call a time out for a little bit. And remember, build in that space so that you can respond. And that space is sometimes really short and sometimes it has to be a bit longer in duration. But either way, allow yourself to respond, not react. Which brings me then to the next practice, and that is choosing words and actions intentionally rather than emotionally. So when we respond emotionally, we tend to make judgments about other people, right? We fill in the blanks with our own emotional charge and we assign motives and we label people and we create stories that may not even be true. So for example, say you're sitting in a coffee shop, right? And you're trying to read something while someone nearby is laughing loudly and they're just, giggling and saying some jokes and whatever. And it just ain't the day for you. So emotionally, you may react in a way that sounds something like, you know what? That clown over there, their laugh is super annoying and it's really starting to make me mad. But if you leverage the previous technique and become a conscious observer, we pause then and we build in some space to assess. And then, while being mindful of the words that we choose to express ourselves, we could respond with what is more true. And that could be, you know what? I'm finding it really difficult to concentrate because the laughter is distracting to me. And do you hear the difference? The first statement is a judgment about another person. The second is simply an observation about our own experience. And when we become conscious of our words, we naturally begin speaking with greater kindness, compassion, and intention. We communicate from a higher frequency, not because we're pretending or faking it, but because we have taken the time to separate the facts from our emotional charge. And when we communicate this way, we are often able to lower the intensity of the moment, and we create conversations that are truthful without being harmful, and honest without being harsh, and direct without being demeaning. So this doesn't just benefit the person that we are speaking to or about, or even the environment that we're in. It benefits us as well. When we choose intentional communication over emotional reactivity, we can help calm our own nervous system by stepping out of the fight or flight survival mode and into a more thoughtful, grounded state. And so the goal isn't to suppress our emotions, because how we feel, I just want to put out there, it really matters. The goal is more so to ensure that our emotions don't become the author of our words. Okay. And I really love that. The emotion doesn't become the author of our words. Yes. Thank you. Okay. Now let me see here. You know what? Because we're doing pretty good on time, I am going to toss in one more practice, and this is not part of my notes, but I am going to tangent off just really quick here. And the last practice for today is to speak light into others. And what I mean by this is our words carry energy, and every conversation that we have is an opportunity to either lift someone up or pull them down. And things like gossip or criticism or speaking unkindly about others may feel harmless at first, but what we are saying doesn't just affect the person being talked about, it shapes the person who is doing the talking too. I mean, think about it. If we are constantly looking for what's wrong with other people, we are training our minds to search for faults, which means we are reinforcing a mindset of judgment, criticism, and negativity. And if that is our routine practice, then over time, it also becomes the lens through which we see the world. So the next time, and I do this too, I am guilty, but the next time we find ourselves wanting to say something negative about a situation or even a person, choose to become someone who speaks light. And what I mean by this is encourage others, give people the benefit of the doubt, and point out pros and the positives. And I'm also going to say too that there will be times that we can totally offer constructive feedback when it's needed. And when that happens, refer back to the last technique about choosing our words intentionally so that the feedback that is being delivered will be received in a very constructive kind of way. And you know what? And if we actually too then happen to be on the receiving side of, say, somebody who's gossiping about another, because that happens too, right? Going around that water cooler and people are talking about other people. And if we happen to be on that receiving side, ask yourself something that we learned back in the first practice, which could be, is this person wanting to communicate with me, or are they looking for my reaction? And here's a hint. If it's gossip, the answer is most likely they're looking for a reaction. And yeah, so I want to underscore something too here really quick. Every word we speak is first heard internally by ourselves. So let's ask ourselves, are my words creating more peace, or are they creating more chaos? Are they creating more joy or more fear? Are they more acceptance and appreciation, Or are they creating more judgment? Because, the wonderful law of attraction, it reminds us that the energy we consistently put into the world is often the very energy that begins to shape our reality. And you know what? That's going to be a wrap for this week. Oh my gosh. I hope that you enjoyed these these 4 practices that I personally incorporate into my every single day. I can honestly tell you that they have transformed the way I think and the way I communicate and the way I protect my peace and the way that I genuinely show up in this world. And now I'm going to say too, they have not made me perfect. No. But they have absolutely helped me become a more resilient and more intentional human in many ways. And in fact, they've also made me much more bulletproof to those energetic bullets of life. And so, you know what? A little challenge for all of you this week. How about take a few of these practices and start intentionally building them into each and every day. Protect your energy and RSVP with a no to low vibe emotional energy, or become the conscious observer. Choose your words intentionally and speak light into every situation. You don't have to become masters of all of these. No, just start practicing them and you will see your relationships, your peace, and your energy all change and evolve for the better. Because becoming bulletproof, it isn't about changing the world around us. It's about changing the way we navigate through it. And I don't know about you, but the more I stay on a high vibe, the more I will attract high vibe abundance. And that, my friends, is definitely a place that I desire to be as often as I possibly can. And so that is going to be my very high vibe finish to the podcast this week, and I'm going to make it a wrap. So I hope that you found today's episode to be helpful. And if you did, then you know what? A lovely rating or review or a follow or sharing it with a friend, all of this is super helpful and it would be really terrific and so very much appreciated. This helps me out so much because you know what? It helps get the pod recognized and it also gives me feedback so that I can keep creating content that is meaningful and helpful for all of you. So thank you so much for your support. I always really appreciate it. And on that note, guess what? I'm your host, Lisa Ryan, and this is the Joy-Filled Universe podcast, where we explore all the tools and tricks that are going to make your universe even more joyful than it already is. And I will see you next week. Bye.